What's happening, family? We're back with another edition of our Soil to the Soul gardening series. Last week we were talking about getting started with your backyard garden. We're in the backyard again, and I told you this week we would talk about soil, which is the foundation of any healthy garden. I don't care what you try to grow, what you want to grow, or how you want to grow it. If you don't have good soil, if you don't have a good foundation for soil, your garden will never maximize, it'll never reach its potential. And so we really want to talk about what it takes to have healthy soil. So the first thing that we want to talk about is Brother J. Don and I are sitting here as he was building the garden out and doing the soil. You know, you need to really think about the soil that is native to your environment, right? So here in the San Francisco Bay Area, Jay, you know, we have a lot of clay soil, and it's really heavy. Some places have sandy soil, but the goal is we want what we call a loamy soil, right? And so when we began working with the garden, there's a lot of clay soil back here. So what we had to do when you have clay soil, you really got to strike that balance. So you really want to add a lot of compost, a lot of organic matter. And so I'll let Brother J. Don say a few things about it, but I know he added like a lot of things like chicken manure, worm castings. We'll say a little bit about that to really enrich in other organic matter to liven the soil. And so, you know, Jay, when you were working with the soil and you were adding that organic matter, how far down did you dig and begin to add the amendments, the compost and the worm castings and the chicken manure? About how far down did you dig?
I think I went about a little over half a foot.
Okay.
It's half a foot, yeah, to get a great depth, but also to maintain that rich soil at the top for the plants to thrive and you know be produced well.
Okay, so what he said is he went down about 6 inches, and that's kind of what you want to do. You want to go like 6 to 12 inches, you know, and then you want to add, and he added probably about 4 to 5 inches of organic matter in there, and he mixed it in, you know, into the soil. Again, you know, there's different types of compost. You can use chicken manure. I know there was a lot of chicken manure in what we had, but the big thing that we put in there was what? The worm castings?
Earthworm castings.
Okay, and earthworm castings are basically what?
You know what worm does when it's eaten.
Okay, so he's not going to say it, but worm castings are essentially, it's the waste of the worms. It is one of the best types of compost. He worked it in the soil. And there's other organic matter that you can add too. You know, one of the things that we haven't done, you know, for some of y'all say, what are you going to do with your scraps if you don't want to fully compost? We'll do another edition where we're really talking about compost. But if you went outside and you just buried things like banana peels or some of your vegetable scraps. Now, let me tell you something. If you're really trying to enrich your soil, you do have to be careful when you do that. When you put that stuff directly into the ground, you need to dig it down, as he said, at least 6 inches. I would say probably 12 inches, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a bunch of rodents and we don't want to do that. But really, as that organic matter breaks down, as the compost, as the worm castings, as all that stuff breaks down, it begins to bring more nutrients, more nitrogen to the soil. You really want your soil to be aerated. And so, you know, it's really powerful. And we'll talk about composting later, but composting basically is that method, right, where the decomposition of organic matter through carbon and nitrogen, and essentially basically what it does is it slow cooks, right, and turns into soil. And we keep talking about soil because I think the first thing that we need to talk about is that soil's not dirt, right? We call it dirt. It's not dirt. Soil is living. It's got a lot of organic matter in it, and so that's what you want in your garden, is healthy organic matter. If life is in it, that means there's going to be life that's going to your food. There's life that's going into your body, life which is nutrition. And so what we have here is an example of what we call loamy soil. I talked to you about clay soil being really heavy, really thick, and sandy soil, essentially that's what it is, it's sand. But when you get loamy soil, you can almost see the aeration in the soil. You can see the richness in the soil. And this is the soil that he's added all this compost and organic matter to. And he has a scoop of it right here. And if you can really see how rich it is, you can see it's microorganisms in there. There are worms that are moving around in there. And that's really what we want in our soil. So if you're planting and starting your garden, we always advocate to do raised beds. We've been working with the UC Co-op Extension, shout out to Brother Rob Bempton, and we've been working with them, and we've been doing soil tests. You need to really get your soil tested. If you don't have access to somebody like UC Co-op Extension and the folks that they have on staff that can really work with us and do some of that soil testing in our own garden, you can buy a soil test kit. A basic soil test kit will cost you anywhere from $15 to $30. The things that you're wanting to test. Why do you want to test your soil? Because you really want to see if there are toxic things in your soil, right? So there could be things like lead, right, or mercury in your soil. If it's in your soil, that means it'll make its way to the root of your plants and ultimately to your body. So Jay has been meticulous about making sure that we had it. So what you could do to avoid some of that, you could look at raised garden beds. We'll talk more about that in the ensuing weeks. You could talk in planter boxes. So if you really look and see what Jay has done, we have planters outside of the main garden bed. And essentially we built a system of planters as well. And they are off the ground. The beds, you don't have to really worry about it because there's a contained environment of the containers of the planters that we had. I talked to you last week. There's ways that you can do it. If you don't want to get big barrels, we have some wine barrels. We have some smaller buckets. You can go to your local. Home Depot or garden center, recycling center. You can get buckets. But again, we want to make sure that they have drainage in your buckets or your terracotta planters or whatever. But you want to have sufficient drainage because the water will get backed up. In a couple of the small pots that we have, we had some drainage, but we didn't really have enough. And so the water's backed up, and so we've had to readjust, right, to what we do because we're going to raise them up.
That's the problem. There's too much grass in the ground.
But we don't want to harm our soil. We want our soil to really be the environment that everything exists in and everything flows from. So the other thing, once the soil, you get your soil worked in, again, you get that rich loamy soil that we see here with all that great organic matter. This is a great environment for growing. Then you really want to talk about how do you retain moisture. And so one of the big strategies to do that is mulching, right, Jay? And so tell us a little bit about what you did in terms of mulching. What kind of mulch that we used in this space?
We did a top layer of cocoa shell mulch, and we put about maybe about 1.5 inches across the top.
Okay.
Once we finished planting everything, we came right back across and just laid it all across the whole entire garden.
So this cocoa shell mulch, when I smell it, it smells like chocolate.
That's
so
right.
that's basically what it is, right?
It is chocolate
It's like
shells.
the shells from the cocoa beans. This is a great mulch that he's used. As he said, he put almost 2 inches of cocoa mulch in it. Cocoa mulch is great because it's light. I know you can't feel this, but unlike some other wood mulches, it's not really heavy, so you can move it around. It really moves around easy. If you like the smell of chocolate, it has a wonderful smell. It is great to retain water, and unlike some mulches, cocoa mulch does not extract nitrogen from the soil. There are other mulches, and you really should always consider using a mulch to retain water. One of the most popular mulches is cedar. We've used cedar mulch before. I love cedar mulch. It has a wonderful scent. Some people don't like the scent of cedar. The other benefit about cedar mulch is it repels insects, but the negativity about that is it may repel some beneficial insects, things like ladybugs that you really need and want in the garden as well. But you really need to go and you need to talk to your local garden authorities about what's the best mulch. The one disadvantage about cocoa mulch, as much as I love it, if you have pets, if you have cats and dogs, you need to be very careful with it. Because if it's ingested in large quantities, and this attracts dogs more than cats, if it's ingested in large quantities, it can be fatal for your pets. We don't really have pets in this garden, so this is a great choice. But if you had dogs or cats, and you really wanted a choice of mulch, you'd probably be better of doing something like a cedar mulch. Again, straw and hay would be another avenue for mulch, but you need to make sure that you know how to compost the straw and hay, because it holds water, and it'll mold and mildew on you really quickly. But we just really love the cocoa mulch because it really works for us. But again, be very careful if you have pets that are going to be near your garden. So that is really kind of where we are. Again, whether you're doing raised bed gardening, whether you're doing in gardening, you really want to go for this loamy soil that really has a ton of organic matter in it. It has a ton of microorganisms in it. It is rich. It's not too dense. It's not too loose. It has the right balance, and that's what you really want to strike. We have more information for you about the foundations of a great garden being soil. Again, soil's not dirt. Soil is alive. Dirt is dead. And so we really want to make sure that you know where to go and what to get. We'll see you next week. I just thank so much for Jay Don's presence because he and Michael Jones, our garden coordinators, are the ones that have really laid the foundation for what we're doing in Food, Faith, and Justice in our gardens at the church, our backyard gardens. And this is how you can do it. Again, I told you last week, whether you have a lot of space or a little space, there is something for you. Whether you have a patio, a balcony, a small space or a big space, we can make it happen. So again, in this day of COVID-19, in these days of community uprisings, we're trying to come to you for strategies how you can feed your family, how we can provide a rapid response to what's going on, how you can cut into your grocery bill, cut into the line that you spend in the grocery stores. That's what we're talking about, right? That's what we're talking about, brother. And so this is revolution. This is a spiritual revolution about what we do to feed ourselves, feed our families, and be healthy. So we'll be coming to you real soon. We have a wonderful meal that Chef Mark is preparing for you, some things that we've cooked that we've pulled right out of the garden, that he's grilling, a wonderful grilled vegetable salad, and some things that we're going to be adding to it, simple vinaigrette. But again, we're here, Soil to the Soul, Garden and Culinary Academy. You know what our motto is? Our motto is simply, we build healthy communities from the soil to the soul. God bless you. We'll see you soon.